There are days when life feels like a wave that never stops crashing. Deadlines, noise, expectations, and in the middle of it all, you forget yourself. But ancient wisdom doesn't fade. It waits quietly, whispering truths so simple, they feel like coming home. Welcome to Trandy Wisdom, where every story speaks to something real and unforgettable. In this episode, we explore 4 truths that are easy to forget, but impossible to live well without, rooted in the teachings of the Buddha and carried through centuries of practice. These reminders are not just philosophy. They are a way to return to balance, clarity, and peace. Whether your life feels overwhelming or simply adrift, these are the teachings that bring you back to the ground beneath your feet. Let's begin. 1. The past cannot be changed. In the thin air of the Himalayan morning, just beyond the reach of the rising sun, an old monk sweeps the monastery courtyard with slow, deliberate strokes. Each movement is unhurried, silent. The bristles of the broom gather dry leaves that fell long before the light touched them. He does not look back to count what he has collected. He simply sweeps. Watching him from a distance stands a visitor, a young man from a distant city who arrived the night before. His face is drawn, not from the cold, but from a weight he carries, a burden invisible to others, yet etched in every muscle of his brow. As the monk finishes his sweeping, the young man approaches, voice soft but cracking. "I've made mistakes. I don't know how to live with them." The monk looks up, offering a faint smile, and places the broom beside the wall. "You are not the first leaf to fall," he says. "But if you keep staring at where you dropped, you'll never see the spring." In the ancient teachings of Buddhism, few truths are as liberating or as difficult to accept as this. The past cannot be changed. Yet this single truth, fully understood, contains the seed of transformation. To live is to carry memory. Some memories cradle us with warmth. Others sting like salt on an open wound. We revisit our words, our choices, the moments we should have paused and didn't, the ones we let pass in silence when we should have spoken. We create mental tapestries of what could have been and wear them like second skins. Regret becomes a kind of ghost, not loud, but always present. It haunts not the places we've been, but the self we believe we could have become. In Buddhist psychology, this ghost has a name: attachment, not only to people or objects, but to our imagined versions of time. The Buddha never denied the pain of the past. He himself knew loss, betrayal, grief, but he taught that clinging to the past is like grasping a burning coal. It only continues to burn you. There is a famous parable in the Pali Canon about a man struck by an arrow. Instead of seeking a cure, he demands to know who shot it, what tribe the archer belonged to, what the arrow was made of, and why it was fired. The Buddha explained, such a man would die before receiving help. So too do we waste our lives dissecting the past, rather than healing from it. The past is not the enemy. The wound is not the obstacle. What poisons us is the illusion that we can go back and undo. It is a form of suffering rooted in delusion, in avidya, ignorance of how reality truly works. Everything that has arisen is impermanent. Everything that happened under the web of conditions that no longer exist. Just as a river does not carry the same water twice, our lives cannot be stepped into the same way again. But here lies the paradox. While the past cannot be changed, our relationship to it can. Buddhist practice does not ask us to erase our history. It asks us to meet it differently. Through mindfulness, we do not escape our regrets. We bow to them. We breathe with them. And slowly, we stop identifying with them. We stop saying, I am the one who failed, and instead whisper, a failure arose and passed. That is the language of awakening, the grammar of liberation. The power of the present moment is not a cliché in Buddhism. It is the gate. Every breath is a bridge between what was and what can be. We cannot rewrite the sentence of yesterday, but we can choose the next word. And again, and again. There's an ancient forest in the south of India where monks still walk barefoot at dawn. The earth is soft, the roots gnarled. Many of these monks come from lives marked by trauma. Former soldiers, prisoners, or men broken by grief. But the forest is indifferent to their stories. It receives each footfall equally. One monk once told a visitor, "This forest taught me something my mind could not. The path doesn't care who I was yesterday. It only knows if I walk today." Forgiveness of others, but especially of ourselves, is not forgetting. In Buddhist terms, it is letting go of the craving for a different past. We stop demanding that the world, or we ourselves, should have behaved differently. We let go, not because the wound is small, but because we are no longer willing to carry its weight. It takes courage to stop turning around. It takes courage to stop rehearsing the same pain, to stop asking the unanswerable, what if I had chosen differently? The path forward is not lit by those questions. It is lit by acceptance, the quiet decision to touch what is real, here, now, and to live from it. There is a story of a young nun who accidentally burned an ancient manuscript. Devastated, she fell at the feet of her teacher. "This was a text passed down for generations," she cried. "I have destroyed something irreplaceable." The teacher looked at her with great tenderness. "It is gone," he said. But the teachings are not lost. If you let this moment become your teacher, you will carry more wisdom than any page could hold. In Buddhist cosmology, the wheel of samsara turns endlessly, not just in lifetimes, but in moments. Every moment we refuse to let go of the past, we are reborn in it. Every moment we meet the present with clarity and compassion, we step out of the cycle. The world will not stop offering reminders of who you used to be, but you do not need to carry their echoes into your every step. A memory is a shadow, and you are the light that casts it. The old monk in the courtyard finishes his sweeping and sits under a tree. The young visitor sits beside him, no longer trembling. The sun has risen fully now, casting gold upon the ground. The leaves are gone. The courtyard is quiet, not because nothing has ever happened here, but because everything that did is allowed to rest. The monk says gently, "If you cannot change the past, let it change you, but not by pain, by wisdom. We cannot sweep away what has been, but we can sweep our minds. We can make space, vast, silent space, for what wants to grow next. And that, perhaps, is the real miracle of Buddhism. Not that it frees us from the past, but that it teaches us how to carry it with grace, with insight, and finally, with peace. 2. Happiness is found within, at the edge of the world, where the Himalayan sky leans down to kiss the stone rooftops of a mountain monastery. A small bell rings through the thin, cold air. It is not the sound of urgency. It is not a call to arms or a cry for help. It is simply a signal. Time for tea. Inside the wooden kitchen hall, monks gather. They speak little. A kettle hisses gently over the fire. One pours, another passes the cups, and then silence descends again. Not heavy, but soft. The youngest monk, barely 17, raises his cup to his lips and exhales a breath he didn't know he was holding. The tea is warm. It is just tea. But in that moment, in that breath, in that warmth, something stirs in him. Happiness in the world outside these mountains. The word happiness carries different weight. It is often linked to acquisition, a better job, a larger home, a longer vacation. It is pursued like a deer in a forest, fast, elusive, always somewhere just ahead. But the teachings of the Buddha do not chase such deer. Instead, they ask a deeper question, not what brings happiness, but where it arises from. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, there is no fire like lust, no grip like hatred, no net like delusion, and no river like craving. And still, he adds, happiness is not found in external conditions. It is found within a calm, clear heart. This teaching is not metaphor. It is a radical reframing of human longing. To the Buddha, true happiness, sukha, is not pleasure, not escape, not distraction. It is the peace that arises when the mind stops grasping at what it does not have and begins to rest in what it already is. There is a story often told in the Theravada tradition of a prince who gave up his kingdom in search of lasting joy. He traveled for years, studying under masters, fasting until his ribs showed, meditating under trees until his legs bled. One day, weakened and discouraged, he collapsed on the bank of a river. A young village girl approached and offered him milk and rice. As the food touched his lips, a clarity washed over him. The realization was not found in the pain, nor in the pleasure, but in the middle, in the balance, in the middle way. That prince was Siddhartha Gautama, the one we now call the Buddha. Happiness within does not mean apathy toward the world. It does not mean turning away from beauty or refusing comfort. But it means not depending on those conditions to define one's joy. A flower is beautiful, but a flower wilts. If your happiness wilts with it, you have confused the mirror for the light. In a Zen garden in Kyoto, there is a simple bench beneath a cherry blossom tree. In spring, it becomes a spectacle of pink rain. Tourists gather, photographers jostle. But one afternoon, long after the crowd had left, an old gardener sat there alone. The petals had mostly fallen. The tree stood nearly bare. When asked why he sat there still, he smiled and replied, "Because it is enough. That is what happiness looks like in Buddhist practice. Not the high of a new possession, not the thrill of victory, but the quiet presence that whispers, 'This moment is complete.' Modern life, with its endless scroll of images and comparisons, trains us to believe that happiness lies always elsewhere, in the life of someone more beautiful, more successful, more loved. But Buddhism teaches that this very belief is the root of suffering. Tanha, craving. We suffer not because we have little, but because we believe what we have is not enough. In the heart of Bangkok, amid the chaos of motorbikes and neon signs, sits a small temple rarely visited by tourists. Within it, a statue of the Buddha smiles gently, eyes half closed. Each evening, a woman comes and sits before it. She has lost her family to time and her home to poverty. But she carries a small candle, lights it, and remains still for hours. A local monk once asked her what she prays for. She answered, "I don't pray. I just sit with someone who understands." Her happiness is not loud. It does not announce itself. But it is real. It does not require the fixing of her circumstances, only the freedom of her acceptance. This is not passive. It is profound. Buddhism is not about resignation. It is about intimacy with reality, with the breath, with the raw, unscripted now. That intimacy is where happiness blooms. Even the word for meditation in Pali, bhavana, means to cultivate. Happiness, in this view, is not a random blessing. It is a garden. It requires attention, soil, water, and light. We cultivate it with mindfulness, with ethical living, with compassion, with understanding. And when we stop trying to steal happiness from the world and instead grow it from within, something remarkable happens. We become unshakable. There is a teaching called the 8 worldly winds: gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disgrace, pleasure and pain. Most people are tossed by these winds all their lives, running toward the pleasant, fleeing the painful. But the one who has found happiness within stands still as the winds blow, not because they are numb, but because they are rooted. They have found shelter in themselves. Years ago, a Western monk in Sri Lanka was asked what had changed most for him. After ordaining, he answered, "I used to wait for things to make me happy. Now I sit still, and the happiness comes to me." This does not mean sadness disappears, nor does it mean we never ache, never long, never dream. But it means we no longer hand over our peace to the world's keeping. We hold it ourselves, gently, like tea in a trembling hand, aware that even this is fleeting. Back in the monastery, the young monk finishes his tea and looks outside. The sky is pale with morning. The day will bring chores, and perhaps moments of joy or disappointment. But he understands now. The tea was not the happiness. The awareness was. The presence. The breath. The choosing to be there fully. The Buddha never promised eternal bliss, but he promised freedom. And that freedom begins when we stop asking the world to make us happy and start discovering the happiness already breathing inside. You will not find it in the next job, or the next love, or even the next spiritual high. You will find it in this breath, if you dare to befriend it. You will find it in this silence, if you stop running from it. You will find it in yourself, not because you are special, but because you are already whole. The bell rings again. The monks rise. The day begins, and happiness, unshouted, walks quietly beside them. 3. Kindness is free. In a dusty village near the banks of the Ganges, where the sun spills gold across the earth and buffalo sleep in the heat of afternoon, an old woman kneels at the roadside. Her sari is threadbare, her hands wrinkled with decades of labor. She is not begging. She is tying a small bundle of food in a banana leaf, rice, lentils, a few herbs, and placing it beside a shrine made of stones. No one asked her to do this. No one pays her. She leaves the offering each day for the wandering dogs and the weary pilgrims who pass through. Then she walks away in silence, disappearing into the crowd like a wave returning to the sea. This is kindness, quiet, unannounced, free. In a world obsessed with metrics of wealth, power, achievement, kindness often feels too subtle to count. It is not loud like ambition. It does not decorate resumes or win competitions. But, in the teachings of the Buddha, kindness is not soft. It is not weakness. It is a form of strength so deep, so steady, that it reshapes the very ground we walk on. In Pali, the word for loving kindness is metta. It is not sentimental affection. It is a fierce, unconditional goodwill that radiates outward, like ripples from a stone cast into still water. Metta does not ask who deserves compassion. It does not seek reward. It simply arises because the heart, when unburdened by hatred or fear, naturally wishes all beings well. The Buddha once said, as a mother protects her child, her only child, even at the risk of her own life, so should one cultivate a boundless heart toward all beings. This was not poetry. It was instruction, a way of being. But how does this teaching survive in the harshness of real life? In a war-torn village in Myanmar, a novice monk once watched his teacher bow to a soldier who had threatened their monastery. The boy trembled with anger. "Why do you bow to him?" he whispered later. The elder replied, "Because I will not let his hatred decide who I am." This is the essence of Buddhist kindness. It is not reaction. It is vow. It is the conscious refusal to let suffering give birth to more suffering. Kindness, then, is not passive. It is active resistance against the pull of bitterness, the tide of indifference, in a world that urges us to protect only our own. Buddhist kindness expands the circle, first to those we love, then to those we know, then to strangers, finally, even to those who have caused us pain. Not because we condone the pain, but because we no longer wish to pass it on. There is a story of a monk in ancient India who was beaten by a thief while walking barefoot between villages. When asked how he felt during the attack, he said, "I noticed anger arising in me, but I also saw the man's suffering. I tried to keep both in my heart without turning them into blame." This is not easy. Buddhism never promises that, but it shows us it is possible. To offer kindness in this way, freely without transaction, is to return to something deeply human. It is to remember that before nations, religions, and roles, we were simply people, vulnerable, breathing, born of the same elements. Science tells us kindness releases oxytocin and lowers blood pressure. But long before laboratories, the Buddha knew this. Kindness is medicine, not just for others, but for the one who gives it. In monasteries across Thailand, novices begin their day, not with doctrine, but with sweeping the grounds. It is not about cleaning. It is about cultivating care for space, for life, for each other. One sweeping motion at a time, they learn the rhythm of metta, to sweep the leaves without resentment, to greet the insects without fear, to walk without crushing the world beneath their feet. Outside the temple, in the crush of modern cities, kindness can feel impossible. You may ride a train where no one looks up. You may stand in traffic where no one yields. You may speak into a room and hear only silence in return. But even here, especially here, kindness becomes practice. To meet indifference without becoming it. To keep offering even when no one notices. That is true strength. Buddhist teachings often remind us that karma is not a system of reward and punishment. It is cause and effect. Each moment of kindness plants a seed. Maybe it blooms in this life, maybe in another. But the soil never forgets. A monk once told the story of a bird that shared its food with a hungry snake. The next season, that snake guarded the bird's eggs from predators. The point was not to expect a return, but to trust in the unseen ecology of compassion. How one act, however small, reshapes the web of life. And sometimes, the kindness that matters most is the one turned inward. In Buddhism, karuna, compassion, is incomplete without the self. Many who give freely to others are harsh to themselves. But the Buddha taught that no one is more deserving of your love than you. To offer warmth to your own pain is not selfish. It is sacred. because only when the heart is full can it truly overflow. There is a practice taught in many traditions called metta bhavana, the cultivation of loving kindness. You begin by offering phrases of goodwill to yourself. May I be happy? May I be safe? May I live with ease? Then you expand to a friend, to a stranger, to someone difficult, to all beings, not with expectation, but with sincerity. In a monastery in Sri Lanka, an old monk once sat each morning whispering these phrases to the ants on his windowsill. They have lives too, he said, and sometimes I step on them without knowing. I offer this for balance. Kindness is not about grand gestures. It is not measured in applause. It is measured in intention. In attention. In how you speak to a child. In how you answer a phone call. In how you respond when no one is watching. It is measured in the silence you leave behind. Does it soothe or disturb? It is measured in the breath you take before reacting. Does it calm or inflame? And it is measured in the spaces you create. Are they safe, open, welcoming? Back in the village by the Ganges, the old woman's bundle has been found by a stray dog, ribs visible beneath patchy fur. The dog eats in silence, tail wagging once, then disappearing down the alley. She will never know. She does not need to. In the eyes of the Buddha, such acts are not small. They are the threads that weave the world together. Without them, we fray. To remember that kindness is free is to remember that you are free, to choose, to act, to heal. The world may not always be kind to you, but you can always be kind to the world. And in that choice, again and again, the light returns. For you only fail if you quit. Beneath the vast sky of ancient Magadha, not far from the dusty plains where the Buddha once walked, there is a narrow path winding through groves of sal trees. The monks who tread this path at dawn leave no footprints behind, only a stillness, as if the forest itself pauses to listen. The path is not easy. Roots twist across the trail like the fingers of time. Thorns catch at the hem of every robe. But still, they walk. One morning, a young monk lags behind the others. His sandals are worn, his thoughts heavier still. Sweat beads on his brow as the sun climbs higher. He stumbles on a root, falls to his knees, and remains there, not from pain, but from a voice inside him that says, "You're not strong enough. This path is not for you." He closes his eyes, ready to surrender to that voice. Then, somewhere ahead, a bell sounds from the monastery. Just one chime. Simple, clear. It doesn't urge him forward. It only reminds him that the path continues, and so can he. In Buddhist practice, the idea of failure is subtle. It is not about missing a goal or breaking a vow. It is not about falling short or taking a wrong turn. In the Dhamma, failure has only one true shape, the refusal to continue. The Buddha did not awaken because he never faltered. He awakened because he refused to stop walking. Before the Bodhi tree, before the final night of his long journey, he faced rejection, misunderstanding, temptation, and exhaustion. The gods offered comfort. Mara sent fear. But the Buddha placed his hand upon the earth and simply stayed. His power was not in brilliance. It was in perseverance. This same spirit threads through every teaching, every chant, every step of the Eightfold Path. Right view, right intention, right effort. They are not one-time achievements. They are continuous acts of remembering, of returning. Buddhism is not a race to enlightenment. It is the cultivation of patience, And patience, in this context, is not passive. It is the fierce courage to remain upright when everything in you wants to collapse. In the ancient monastic codes, there are verses whispered by candlelight before the morning alms round. One of them reads, "As long as breath remains in this body, I shall not turn away." This is not dogma. It is a commitment, a quiet rebellion against the inertia of despair. Not far from the banks of the Niranjana River, there is a cave where hermits still sit in silence. Some stay for weeks, others years. One man once sat for 90 days, rising only to drink water and sweep the stone floor. When asked what he had learned, he replied, "That my mind is louder than the world, and still I can remain." To quit is not merely to walk away. In the language of the practice, quitting happens in subtle moments, when we stop trying to understand ourselves, when we numb instead of observe, when we close our hearts to what hurts. But the Buddha's path invites a different response, not to suppress pain, but to meet it, not to force insight, but to stay long enough for it to bloom. There is a story in the Vinaya of a monk who failed to memorize even a single verse of the teachings. Despite years of effort, discouraged, he was ready to disrobe. But the Buddha told him, "Sweep the monastery courtyard each day. Clean the dust as you would the mind." Months passed. Then, one evening, as he swept, the verse came, not from effort, but from embodiment. His mind, cleared by the simplicity of not quitting, became the soil where understanding finally took root. This is what the practice teaches. Even when progress is invisible, transformation is happening. Just as a tree grows in silence beneath the earth, our deepest shifts often occur when nothing seems to be moving at all. In the ancient texts, one of the greatest spiritual obstacles is called thina middha, sloth and torpor. It is the dullness that creeps in when we expect instant results. It whispers, "Why bother?" It disguises itself as practicality, even self-care. But beneath it lies fear, the fear that our effort may not be enough. The Buddha did not condemn this feeling. He recognized it. He taught how to face it, not by force, but by resolve, by learning to find the smallest possible next step and taking it, even if that step is a breath, even if it is the decision not to leave. In the land where the Buddha taught, even now, rice is planted by hand, a single seed at a time, bent backs in the summer sun. No machinery, no speed. But the farmers know, if they stop planting, there will be no harvest. The rain does not arrive for those who wait. It arrives for those who prepare. So too with wisdom. Those who quit never see the rain. But those who remain, those who bow to the rhythm of time, those who sit through the dry season, will feel the first drop on their skin and know that something sacred is beginning. Not every practice session brings peace. Not every chant yields clarity. Sometimes, all you learn is how restless you are, how impatient, how far your thoughts still wander. But to witness this without turning away is already awakening. You only fail if you quit. But even if you do, if you walk away for a month, a year, a lifetime, the path does not close behind you. It does not scold. It waits. The Bodhi tree still stands. The cushion is still there. The breath is always returning. You can always begin again. There is no such thing as too late in the Dhamma. Only the question, are you ready to return? Back on the forest trail. The young monk rises slowly. The dust clings to his knees. The sun warms his back. The bell has stopped ringing, but the echo remains. He takes a step, then another. He is not the fastest, not the strongest, but he is walking. And in this path, in this practice, that is enough. Because in Buddhism, there is no failure for the one who continues.